Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the fight previews, recaps, and exclusive interviews that your heart desires. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm here with my co-hosts Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And guys, let's talk about UFC 320. In the main event, Alex Pereira retrieves his title back from Magomed Ankalaev. Merab Dvalishvili also retained his title against Corey Sandhagen in a signature performance. But let's talk about the main event, Poatan. He had a y'all must have forgot sort of performance, stopping Ankalaev in that first round. And Erich, I'm going to start with you. In terms of these elite fighters that maybe suffer a loss, do we write them off too quickly for their future? What do you think about that? Did we write off Pereira too quickly?
I think we've all been, at least in some cases, guilty of writing fighters off too quickly. I myself wrote off Justin Gaethje probably a couple times, and that was, the way that I look at it and the way that I broke down why someone would write off a fighter. I think there's, I had five main factors that go into this. First one would be damage sustained throughout their career. You're projecting them to fall off at some point because the body can only take so much damage. We've seen fighters fall off. Every fighter falls off at some point due to damage. That's one thing. Age and projecting athletic decline. So maybe in a situation where they're getting older, they're athletically declining, but they're maybe haven't sustained that much damage. Like eventually, Khabib, even if he had stayed undefeated, by the time he was 39, we were going to be projecting some sort of athletic decline there. Hype crash, right? And this is something that happened to Bo Nickel, right? People are currently probably writing off Bo Nickel because of a hype crash. He was, a very highly thought of prospect, lost to Reiner de Ritter. There was a hype crash there. The fourth one would be outside narrative. Maybe there was an emotional setback or a mental setback. An example, maybe people wrote off Francis Ngannou once upon a time when he fought Derek Lewis, and that fight was kind of a snore fest, and he lost the decision. And Dana White comes out and criticizes him. So outside narrative would be a fourth one, and then there's also I'll just call it new blood syndrome. You get really you kind of forget about your current girlfriend and you're interested in the girl at the bar in the situation. So a Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis.
It's the meme with the guy turning.
Yeah. He's probably thinking about other girls.
I was just making sure this wasn't maybe your romantic situation. I want you getting yourself in hot water or something, Erich.
No. Good boy over here. Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis was a situation where Dustin Poirier was a big underdog to Benoit Saint Denis. Obviously, he was coming off of a pretty bad knockout loss to Justin Gaethje in that fight, but Benoit Saint Denis was a big favorite in that fight, and I think there was a little bit of new blood syndrome there. So that's the way I broke it down. Is like, do we write off fighters too quickly? I think that those are the five main factors. Then you kind of got to sniff out like which of the five are the most relevant in that situation. For Alex
The
Pereira,
Richter scale, you could call it.
Yeah, we can call it the Richter scale. And then
because that's not taken.
No, it's definitely not. And Alex Pereira, I would say that we were kind of projecting an age and athletic decline. Obviously, he's been fighting for a long time, but he made it like he came out there and made it look like Ankalaev didn't belong in the octagon with him. And Scott, I'll kick it over to you. What you thought about that fight? Pereira looked amazing.
I mean, look, he fought exactly the way I wanted him to fight, which was pressure, come forward, don't back down, that kind of thing. I mean, he took it to another level, which is something that an elite fighter like him should be able to do better than me sitting at home can tell him to do, right? So there's that. But to get back to kind of that original question, as far as, do we write them off too soon? Absolutely, we do. It's way too often, way too soon. I could not believe that Pereira was a plus 200 or more at some of these books when they closed. I mean, this is ridiculous. That was out of touch with reality. We saw that Poatan proved that it was out of touch. When the chin starts going, that's when I get concerned about these guys. The chin in particular, where they're taking knockouts, like someone like a Dominic Reyes. You look at that and you say, okay, there's concern here. He's not going. There's a ceiling that's going to be hit by somebody who can hit you real hard. There's a lot of those guys who can do that, and women too on that side of the spectrum here. But yeah, I think elite fighters, we just kind of have to accept it in MMA, and I think a lot of us accepted it a long time ago, and we somehow forgot it. In MMA, elite fighters will lose to elite fighters sometimes, and they can come back from that. Losing just kind of happens, especially when there's so many different styles of this sport, right?
One thing I will, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go first, Scott. Jake.
I would say one thing I will say though is I feel like we've been a little bit conditioned. Like these people rarely get like a honeymoon ending. Like, and a lot of champions and like people that are like fan favorites, they suffer a loss and then they kind of go on a losing skid. And more often than not, they don't like go back to get their title, right? That things are kind of seeming to change in that regard. Volkanovski got his belt back. Pereira gets his belt back, and I'm sure, Scott, you've got many more examples that you could probably give me since you've been watching a fair bit longer. But at least for me, in my tenure of watching the sport like this, I don't usually expect someone to get the belt back just because I haven't seen it as much, you know.
No, those are good shouts. I think they are, but yeah, it's true. Like, if especially, I think a lot of people pointed to Poaton's age. They were all about, oh, he's 38 years old and that kind of thing. Look, he's 38. And I think we talked about this last week at a very heavy weight class. The heavier weight classes, they've got a little bit higher ability to kind of keep it going a little longer. I think it's probably
100%.
the power. I think the power has a big thing to do with that. We've seen it. It's happened across combat sport. The heavier they are, the longer they can last because there's a little bit less technique and speed involved. So I think we need to be much more patient with the idea that these guys can fight a little bit longer, especially at this weight class, and especially someone like Poatan. Again, that last fight, it was close. It really was kind of a close fight. Why did we think that he had no shot against this guy? I didn't see it.
I
Eric,
think
what were
that
you
the
gonna say? Yeah.
projection, I think that the projection there was Ankalaev didn't land a takedown, and that you would project him to land takedowns. And you know, in the first fight, it seemed like Ankalaev was shooting for the takedowns to set up his striking. Whereas when I was projecting the fight, I had a long shot prop on Ankalaev by submission for the fight because I really wasn't sure what to expect from Pereira going into this. And the way that I like pinned it was, well, Ankalaev is a lifetime grappler, who should, in theory, be able to land takedowns against someone like Poatan. Now, where I think I messed up was that Poatan was on his back foot a lot, and Poatan had a little bit of a different strategy, and also arguably maybe in better conditioning to just come forward and come right at Ankalaev, who clearly did not want to be on his back foot. Once he was put on his back foot, he became very uncomfortable up against the cage. And, I mean, we've seen that against all of Alex Pereira's opponents. We saw it with Jamal Hill. We've seen it many times. When Pereira puts you up against the cage, you see some guys panic, and Ankalaev 100% panicked.
Yeah,
And yeah,
100%.
just throw in one more thing too about those takedowns. I mean, look, I understand there's kind of the theory that hey, he should be able to land a takedown on him, but also I think what we need to start accepting about Alex Pereira is that he actually has some pretty good takedown defense. He really does. He can get taken down, but it's not like he's deficient in that area. He can do what he needs to do to keep it in his realm. And once we found that out about this guy, I think we realized that, oh crap, he can do real damage to the entirety of the UFC roster.
Yeah.
Really, even up to heavyweight. I mean, there's a lot of matchups that I think at three weight classes, if we actually think he has a chance of getting down to middleweight, when he can't, he
Scott,
can't anymore. But he can beat so many people.
that goes perfectly into my next question, which is after the fight, Alex Pereira multiple times said that the thing in his sights for his next step is to move up to heavyweight. He says he wants to fight Jon Jones at the White House card. Scott, I'll throw it right back to you. Do you think that he should move up to heavyweight at all? And if so, should he do it next? Should he wait for either Yuri Prohaska or Carlos Ulberg? It seems like it's, between those two guys. What do you think is the right move for Pereira next?
Just do it. Just do it. Let's get it done. I mean, I know he wants Jon Jones, right? And he was very respectful of Jon Jones and the tragedy his family faced with his brother's sudden passing, Arthur's passing, and my condolences to the Jones family. I'm sure I speak for all three of us. But that's clearly the fight that Jon wants too, right? This is not interrupting something that Jon wouldn't have wanted. It's not an unwanted distraction. If anything, whenever Jon is ready to kind of focus on that part of his life again, I think he'll find that the situation has met where he's looking to go, right? I think we have to do that. I imagine they want to wait for the White House, right? If they're going to do that fight. I know Dana has said what he said. This is a new opportunity. We're in a new world order. That fight is back on the table. And if they can get it and kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they just have that fight off to the side and then they have the heavyweight division goes on, Maybe they end up making an interim belt. I don't know if they do that. I don't love interim belts, but frankly, it wouldn't be the worst case scenario for them to have the Jones versus Poatan fight. And then on the side, you also have an interim fight between Yuri Prohaska and Carlos Olberg. That kind of solves several of their problems, I think.
Eric, what do you think, Mr. Box Office?
Yeah, I mean that's so box office, right? And it's interesting because like that White House card is so difficult to project because it's outdoors and it's in July and it's humid and it's like there's so many
June,
outside.
June.
No, well, yeah, now it's June. That's right. Regardless, it's very, very tough to like project like what that's going to even be like for the fighters. Are they going to be able to fight at full capacity in that in those situations? When's the last time that there was an outdoor card? It was a long time ago, Scott. I know it's happened, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. Regardless,
Pure outdoor in the UFC. I'm not even sure they've actually done like a pure outdoor card.
are they not? Maybe I'm thinking of Pride then.
I'll do some research. I'll throw it on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up. But regardless, Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall, I thought was an interesting idea. If you wanted to do the belt, I didn't think of an idea of Pereira versus John without the belt involved at all. Just because I didn't think that it made sense to do with that, like to hold like to I guess hold up the division in a way like where light heavyweight's held up, heavyweight is held up. I would like to try to get the divisions going a little bit. So I guess it would be a risk for the UFC to have Aspinall versus Pereira. And then if Aspinall were to beat Pereira, it would kind of it would complicate everything. John doesn't want to fight Tom. It's not happening. John doesn't want to fight Tom.
Yeah,
So,
I think Eric, I think kind of piggyback on what you're saying, like they have the fight now, and I think it's the perfect timing for it. So that it's almost riskier for them to keep either one of these guys busy with doing anything else. If they think that's the fight that they want to make it when they can and don't do anything else. That's just what they should do.
yeah, you got me. I definitely I don't have a rebuttal. I was gonna say Pereira versus Aspinall, but it's just too risky, and I didn't think about the idea of just no belt. It's just a fight.
The only thing is,
dude, you don't need a belt. We'll watch it. No, everyone will watch that
it's actually
fight.
better.
Doesn't matter.
It's actually better that the belt's not involved because like that seems like that was the fix beforehand when John was like, I want to fight Pereira. It's like, well, there's a guy who's like he should fight for it,
Right.
And now that's been solved. But one thing
And
that
I think we're good now.
yeah, one thing that I am curious though, and the one hiccup I could see is like Dana just does. He seems like he just does not want John to be on that White House card and has not forgiven him for what happened with the holdup and all that stuff. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but.
There's a lot of time between now and June.
That is true. A lot of time to forgive, but I don't know. Dana seems like a stubborn guy. Very interested to see how that one plays out. But let's go to Ankalaev. And Eric, I'll throw this one to you. We received news afterwards that Ankalaev, he said he had a rib injury. Daniel Cormier said he confirmed this on his own show. And, in the first fight, Pereira says that he was compromised, that he was only at 40% for that one. Why have injuries kind of been such a impact on these two fights, and what do you make of it?
So prior to the second fight, when all the news came out, Pereira is like he had norovirus and a broken wrist. The broken wrist thing, I was like, okay, maybe. But the norovirus in my head, and like we've seen it in boxing forever and UFC and as well. A lot of excuses can be made after losses, and it's really like, how do you rebound from a loss? And whenever I start hearing excuses about losses, and there are some creative reasons for losses. I slept bad. Paulo Costa, I drank too much wine the day before. Like I've heard a lot. I've heard everything.
Tito Ortiz had a cracked skull.
Oh God,
Can't be doing that.
Mike Tyson, spinal. I had a spinal fracture.
Spinal.
Yeah. So, we've heard a lot of creative things. This one specifically feels both of these injuries specifically feel more frustrating because both fighters feel like they were fighting at like 50% capacity, maybe. Like Ankalaev totally folded within 90 seconds in that fight. And I'm not saying that, Pereira didn't do anything to make that happen. Obviously he did. I just want to see both fighters at their athletic peak. And it seems like neither of them were in either fight. So it's a really frustrating situation to have both as a fan and, I don't know if the UFC cares, but as a fan, it's a little frustrating because both fighters come out right afterwards and prove have legitimate injuries going into it. It's just like, what do we do? Like, I feel like I feel like I'm back at square one. I feel like I didn't learn anything about
I'll
either
tell you
fight.
what we do. I'll tell you what we do. We just don't worry about it. These guys get hurt in training. These men and women get hurt in training. They get sick. They face trials and tribulations, and sometimes they pull out, and sometimes they don't. And obviously, there's consequences in many different ways that they pull out, which is why they stay in. But frankly, once they're in there, they have to accept that this is just part of it. And I think they do. I actually think they do. I don't know that necessarily Pereira is sitting there and making excuses for when he says that. I think someone tells you or someone leaks it or whatever, and are they looking for sympathy? I don't know. I doubt it. I think most of the time they're just looking to prove it again the next time. Hey, I can do better. And look what he did. He did do
Did.
better this time. Poatan did. Ankalaev looked terrible, but also he was only in there for a few seconds. I don't know how that fight would have played out if Poatan hadn't bull rushed him the way he did. And I think he won that fight because of his strategy and not because of a broken rib. The broken rib would have definitely messed him up if it went longer, but I think it didn't matter. I just think he executed correctly and end of story. That's really what we ought to focus on, what we got.
That's fair enough. And I like that point that you said about it's not necessarily about like looking for sympathy, but maybe like just so you know, like I'm gonna do better this time. Like looking forward more so.
Some people maybe make excuses. I can't
Yeah,
speak to everybody, but I bet you in a lot of minds of fighters, it's just like, hey, this is what I dealt with. It is what it is.
yeah, absolutely. And let's get to this co-main event. Merab Dvalishvili retains his belt against Corey Sandhagen. Like I said before, in signature fashion, this was a Merab Dvalishvili performance through and through, right? And it's time to have that conversation. I feel like people say this on like ex MMA Twitter a lot. It's like it's time to have this conversation. Is Merab Dvalishvili the bantamweight goat? And I'll throw this one to you, Scott. What do you think?
He is.
Yeah.
Bantamweight they don't really have a true GOAT leading up to this point anyway. In the way that, say, 205 pounds with Jon Jones or 125 pounds with Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. They have true GOATs that we can point to, and it's like, well, nobody argues it anymore. We got Dominic Cruz, we got TJ Dillashaw, we had Marab's guy, Aljamain Sterling. They kind of all have their very interesting arguments for why they might have been the greatest up till a certain point in terms of bantamweight. But I think what we have with Merab is this very rare type of juggernaut dominance from him. Aljo, of course, is his buddy. He deferred to Merab as the GOAT, and that there's a little bit of friendliness there. That was before the fight, by the way. There's a little bit of it's my friend here, and I'm going to pump him up a little bit, but I think he's right. I think we're going to look back at this stretch of Merab's career from like 2022 until probably going deep into 2026. I mean, as far as the way things are looking,
No signs of
maybe
slowing
even
down.
longer. This is like a 4 or 5 year stretch where he's just going to beat killer after killer after killer after killer, and he's going to leave the entire bantamweight division like laying prone on the ground in his wake in such a scorched earth way that I think we're going to look at this as like, man, this was a really rare time. And I think he's taking advantage of his peak in a rare way too, because he keeps fighting. He's a very active champion. So I think he's already there, and I think he can do a lot more.
Eric, what do you think?
So just to go back, Merab Dvalishvili, he lost his opener to Frankie Saenz, and then Ricky Simone was given-ish. If you rewatch that fight, it's very interesting the way it ends. But Merab Dvalishvili is called out on a called unconscious basically on a guillotine choke by Ricky Simone as the fight ends. He had won the fight on points if it had gotten to the scorecards. It
He
didn't.
just needed to answer the bell basically at the end.
Just
Yeah.
needed to answer the bell. He has not lost since 2018. It has been 7 years since he has lost. It's unbelievable what Merab Dvalishvili has done. At one point, and Scott, I'm surprised you didn't say this. At one point, Brendan Barrow was thought as the bantamweight GOAT. He was 32 and 0, and he was doing the
It was
Jose
a
Aldo
different
kicks
case.
and well, the only issue is that he just hung around way too long. Once TJ Dillashaw knocked him out, twice, he went 2-8 to end his career. So if you want to take the stretch of Burrell going 32 and 0 over 9 years, then you can maybe squint and look at it. But the 2-8 ending is so bad, and it was really tragic by the end. It's so bad that it's like you kind of have to throw it out. But then all the same names that you said, Dominic Cruz, Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw. But then you got the EPO stuff, and I have no idea what fighters are taking. But TJ Dillashaw with the EPO pop for a drug test is a little tough as well. So yeah, I would say Merab Dvalishvili is definitely the GOAT.
Makes things a little bit
Yeah,
more clear.
I'll throw in another older school name for you guys too. Miguel Torres. He was like kind of the pioneer of the bantamweight division. He brought it along. I think he had a fantastic career, but he was a little more, a little too early for us to know relative to the competition how good everybody was, and that's where I think Dominic Cruz kind of bridged that gap a little bit more.
Wasn't that a homework assignment? Miguel Torres versus Mighty Mouse, right?
Mighty Mouse, yeah. You know what? I've got several fights of Miguel Torres I could throw at you guys, so I'm going to pick another winner of a fight, probably one he wins, so you can see him like at his real power.
I think the Mighty Mouse one that we watched was Ray Borg with the
No, that was another one. We watched two. We
Oh,
watched
okay.
two different ones.
Okay, you were right, Eric. Then okay, alrighty. Well,
It's been a
let's
long time for you, I guess.
let's
It's been a
talk
long year.
about it. Yes, let's talk about another bantamweight, Corey Sandhagen, the guy that was standing at the opposite end of the octagon from Merab Dvalishvili. He had some good early success. I mean, in my scorecard, he won round one. I'm not sure what you think about that one, Scott, but what do you explain for his diminishing success over the course of the fight against Merab?
Yeah, I thought he won round one,
Okay.
and I was actually just a little surprised that it was split on the cards, but I'd watched again before I said it wasn't a good score or anything like that. As far as his performance, I think, at least to some degree, Merab allowed that to happen because, look, all that pre-fight talk that both of these men had with me, with the post, talking about, oh,
Yeah.
Merab's going to strike, he's going to strike. He did. He
Yeah.
went out there and he looked to strike in the first round, and no, he didn't win the fight in my assessment, but in one judge's assessment, he did. And it was almost like, okay, you get that out of your system, Marab. Okay, let's go back to what really works. So once Merab decided to fight a certain way, Corey Sandhagen's chances to win went down dramatically, unfortunately. That's the way it played out. And, he just can't stop those relentless takedowns. I mean, he set a record for a single fight, I believe. Merab did. And not only that, like there's that element of it that Merab fought the way he fought and everything, but he also mixed in some really hard strikes. He was hurting Corey Sandhagen in this
Yeah.
fight. I want to say he landed like probably the four hardest strikes of the whole fight.
He almost
And
finished
it's
him.
not that Corey didn't land. Yes, he did. He really almost got him out of there. I was impressed. It was a fantastic fight. Mark Goddard's obviously a good referee. He let that one go. And I think rightly so. I don't think it was the right time. And not just because they made it to the bell, but I think he still had more in him. That was a good job by the referee there. I think really it comes down to Corey Sandhagen fought as well as Merab allowed him to fight, and then he didn't. And unfortunately, I just don't know how well a rematch would go for him either.
Eric, your thoughts on Corey's performance?
Yeah, well, I thought Corey looked pretty solid. He's very big for a bantamweight, and I think that is like one of his
Long.
better strengths. He is a very tall guy.
Mhm.
He packs a punch. He's got the good knees that, I thought that maybe if like you squint, you could get a knee on time a takedown well, and maybe get a flash knockout or something like that. But you hit it nail on the head, Scott. Like he fought as well as Merab. Merab is able to strike with Corey at like an average, maybe like slightly below maybe Corey's level of striking. But once you mix in the takedowns, it is pure dominance. Merab had 8 takedowns in the second round. He had 33 strikes to Corey's 2. Like it was dominant from Merab. And I would just say this, and like I was trying to think of who else would categorize as this, but Merab's probably the best minute winner in UFC history. Like if he would just go in there and his goal was just to win minutes, he'd probably never lose at that weight class. Like it's really unbelievable the way that he wins weights, the way that he wins
Yeah.
rounds.
I see what you're saying. Like compared to someone who like maybe has like a couple big moments in a round to win them.
Yeah, and like even volume strikers, like volume strikers who go in there and their goal is to maybe like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson who's point fighting you a little bit, and he's
Corey
like he's gonna,
Sandhagen's also a volume striker.
yeah he is, yeah, that's a good point. He's better than all of those guys at it because like he's able to mix in the wrestling and the striking at such a high volume that he'll just never lose a round unless he gets knocked out.
I think he's betting better at the mixing and the striking. That's the crazy thing. I think what I was most impressed with this off of this fight is just how well he mixed in the striking and getting power numbers in, because this is not the way he fought against like Jose Aldo, for example, a couple years ago. Jose
Yep.
Aldo, that was a lot of, it was pressing him against the cage and landing here and there, but not too much. He really, if he fought the way he did against Jose Aldo as he had over on Saturday, I mean, maybe he finishes Jose Aldo.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
he's getting that's a scary thought for the rest of the bantamweight division, I would say.
Yes,
But let's get
exactly.
to the. I'm not sure what the word for three for penultimate would be, but the third to last fight on the card, we got Yuri Prohaska, who, I mean, comeback performance against Khalil Roundtree Jr. He needed a finish, he got the finish. Yuri Prohaska, just come on. What more can we say about the guy? He's a special person. But now they're in this kind of weird position, right? You saw Yuri Prohaska's reaction after Poatan finished Magomed Ankalaev. He was, very emotional in the stands. Could be next for title. Carlos Ulberg was also there ringside. I'm gonna throw this one to Eric. What do we do with this kerfuffle at 205?
Kerfuffle is a good word to describe it. It is a weird situation to have at 205 because Yuri's fought Pereira already, and for me specifically, like I don't really want to see that one again. I want to see Pereira fight a new body. So I would, if I personally were to fight,
Amen.
yeah, we need new bodies. So for me personally, if I was matchmaking 205 and Pereira was going to defend, now that's the big X factor is that Pereira doesn't really seem like he wants to defend 205 right now. It sounds like he wants to fight Jon Jones at the White House. So if assuming that he would actually defend 205, I think the fight to make would be Olberg versus Alex Pereira for the title. I would be surprised if they were willing to hold up light heavyweight for 8 months, but I mean, who knows? Maybe they do. Pereira.
Longer, because they would need to then recover after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a
and
whole year. That's a year.
yeah, so they're gonna have to hold up 205 for a whole year for this. Now, if they were to do that, you're looking at. I would like to see Yuri and Ankalaev fight. Quite frankly, I think that that would be a really, really fun fight. And I think that geographically you could do it in some fun places as well. So if you do Yuri versus Ankalaev, Pereira versus Olberg,
Yeah.
that sounds like mathematically makes the most sense, but doesn't sound like they
Chef's
really have.
kiss, Eric.
Yeah, that's chef's kiss, right? But like it sounds like Pereira and Jones are going to fight. So it kind of leaves Olberg in the lurch a little bit. Maybe you do Olberg versus Yuri and then Ankalaev versus someone else. That would be kind of where I'm at on it.
Scott, any disagreement there?
No, I really don't. I mean, you heard what I said about the potential for an interim, and if they go an interim, or let's say Poatan vacates and he says maybe I'm done at 205, I'm just going to fight at heavyweight now. Then yeah, I think we're talking about a very easy case of it's Yuri Prohaska against Carlos Ulberg, and I don't think anybody's mad about that as a title fight. But yes, if it ends up going the other way, then yeah, I think you're going to be doing Yuri Prohaska versus Magomed Ankalaev. It's a fresh matchup. I think the winner of that one very easily would qualify as a championship contender for Poatan. It doesn't matter that Yuri lost by knockout twice to Poatan. At that point, he will have done all the work that's needed to be done to say, okay, let's see how a third fight goes, because people would still watch it. And then Ankalaev, you set up a trilogy fight there as well, and that's at least a rubber match that goes either way. So yeah, I that's how I would set it up, depending on there's, again, two avenues.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like what we came together with our conclusion is all those things I'd be happy with. So there we go. That wraps up UFC 320. Let us know your thoughts down below. Is there anything that you disagree with us on? Let us know in the comments. But guys, we also had PFL take place last weekend on Friday night, or actually, if you're stateside like
Well,
we
it was
were,
Friday night local time.
yeah, yeah. It was in the middle of the
In Dubai.
workday. Yeah, I did not have an easy time getting to watch that one during the workday, but we made it happen. And Usman Nurmagomedov defeated Paul Hughes via decision. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there was actually quite a bit of controversy after the fight happened with the scorecards.
Was there?
There was I don't know. It was just a little bit. I think I read a couple things, but we do have a very big judging aficionado, Mr. Scott Fontana. I feel like this is a temporary comeback of the Couchside Judges podcast, which you used to have for quite a long time. So we're gonna bring it back in spirit, and let's talk about some of these rounds because I mean there was a 50-45 scorecard for what was a very close fight. So Scott, let's get your thoughts on the round by round breakdown on that fight.
I do as best I can without my longtime partner and my buddy, but as far as me holding it down here, let's just get out of the way that rounds 1 and 4, no one really seems to be disputing the fact that Usman Nurmagomedov won those rounds pretty clearly on all three judges' cards. He performed really well in those rounds. Those are probably the two most dominant rounds for either way in this entire fight. So they're not really what we're talking about here. I want to skip to round 2 because this is where we start to see some judging disagreement here. And I gave this one to Hughes. I thought it was much better than the first round for him. He landed better, more consistently than he was able to. Usman, he had some really good success in the first round with grappling and getting the back. He limited that success in this round, but I did not think it was maybe not crystal clear for Hughes. I just went that way. So, it's still some room potentially to go in the other direction on that one. And mind you, I wanted people to know this. If you're hearing, when you watch fights, they're like, oh, the numbers say someone's ahead on that round, that kind of thing. Judges aren't privy to that. Unless you knew that in your head because you were counting, you can't expect anyone else to do that. Let's skip to round 3, though. Did you have anything you wanted to say on round 2, Eric? Because I bet you scored it a certain way. Did you have Hughes?
I did. I did score a certain way. I obviously 1 and 4 very clear. Two I had pretty. Round 2 I had decently confident is what I wrote. Decently confident. Paul Hughes wins round 2.
Confident. Okay. All right. So let's go to round 3, though. I think this one's probably the closest round of the fight. I think we would agree, Eric, right? This one I went for Nurmagomedov here. Look, Hughes landed some of the best shots, right? He actually did. I think that. But Nurmagomedov seemed to be pretty consistently landing with those stiff jabs, and I think you can't underrate the jab in mixed martial arts because look, the gloves are smaller. You can really do a lot more damage with even a single jab in MMA than you can otherwise. So I can understand if you went the other way, Eric, and I'm willing to bet you had that one for Hughes probably, right? You probably deferred to Hughes on round 3. No, really?
No, I had it. So
Okay.
and here's a question for you, Scott.
Yeah.
How, when you're watching a fight, how seriously do you take obvious damage? Because Paul Hughes's eye was very damaged after the round and during the round.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do you take that into account?
Like visible damage.
Well,
Visible
visible
damage. His
damage. I
eye was
mean,
closed.
we have now seen, especially with the rewording of the criteria, the clarification, let's say, of the criteria, that there's a little bit more emphasis on allowing stuff like that to be scored for the fighter. But also, it's not just visible. I mean, when the eye is starting to close a little bit, there's some functional issues there. And
Yes.
that's what if I'm a judge, and I'm not a judge, but I've passed the certification, the not certification, the class for it. I could go and become a judge if I wanted to. Not going to. But my understanding is that you'd be looking for things that kind of diminish them as a fighter. So a superficial cut here, not such a big deal. A superficial cut here, okay, it's in the eye, it's getting a little big deal. The eye's starting to swell shut. Now we're talking about something that's a lot more prominent, a lot more problematic, and that's the type of thing you really do have to weigh.
But the tricky part is, right, at least my question is, like, you would probably only be able to count that in for the round in which that occurred, right? But the thing is, like, things
Correct.
can swell
Yes.
up over the course of a fight regardless of what happens. So it's like,
If they swell it up even more, then you kind of start scoring it some more. But if it's looking the same, I mean, my understanding is you really ought to just say, okay, that happened in that round, and that's when it happened. But let's say it's closed like a little bit, and then it closes all the way. Well, they did some more in that round, didn't they?
fair enough.
Unless they didn't land. If you can't point to a strike that kind of did it, I mean, then,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you just
that's the
can't.
first
You
and
have to be able to
foremost.
back.
Yeah.
You need to be able to defend it. Like a judge after the fight, they're going to talk to whoever is presiding commission wise, whether it's a regulator or, when they go overseas, I imagine, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the The Mohegan Tribe Commission would probably be involved, as I know they do a lot with PFL.
Yep.
So my assumption is they would still have to answer to somebody like, say, Mike Mazzulli, the former ABC president who's in charge of the Mohegan Tribe. They need to justify why they scored it a certain way. If they can't, and if they can't do it within the bounds of the scoring, they're not going to get work anymore.
Well, let's talk about round number 5, and then we'll kind of get
Yes.
back to that sort of aspect on the fight. But so, Scott, what was your
Right.
thoughts on round 5?
So round five, this is the one that I think a lot of people are a little more up in arms about, right? I think when it comes down to it, I had this one for Hughes. I thought it was a very busy round overall, right? This was, I think, the one that had the most going on between both men. And it was a good round, I thought, for him. He stung Usman, a few notable times. There was that clash of heads, right? And, the damage there does not score because it's an illegal strike. It's been an acknowledged illegal strike. They're not going to score any of the damage off of that. But otherwise, I mean, the champ didn't get much done with any of his takedowns. I didn't think he outlanded Hughes in that one. I thought this was his best round. I gave him the round. What do you think, Eric?
Yep. So also had round 5 for him now, and we'll talk about the scorecards, but I think Usman Nurmagomedov maybe intelligently was styling on Paul Hughes, does the high crotch takedown, throws him down, doesn't do anything with it, but walks back to the center of the octagon, hands up, is screaming, and then even the commentary was like the Nurmagomedov corner is going crazy right now. I think that does have an effect on judges, and I think that's something to look at. A lot of talking from Usman Nurmagomedov, especially in the beginning, but then Paul Hughes does land a jab that stuns Usman, who actually I don't want to say like gets knocked down, but definitely like falls off his feet for a second, then pops back up. So yeah, but Paul Hughes definitely takes round 5 pretty clearly. We're gonna have the same scorecard on this one.
Yeah, I thought that getting this round over to Usman Nurmagomedov, I thought that was a little
Tougher
that
of
was
a
harder
sell?
for me to it was harder for me to comprehend. Now you have to remember, anytime you're watching a fight from home, is you do not get those sounds, you don't get those feels of how hard strikes are. So sometimes things look and sound different from home than they do cage side, right? And I try to account for that. This one I still had a harder time. And the majority score on this one, on this particular round, this was a Hughes round, 2 out of 3. It was Judge Brian Miner, who, by the way, a very experienced both referee and judge, who actually he's accredited to train officials. This is a solid official. This is not some rinky dink, someone that you never heard of, thrown into the fire when they ought not to be. I still disagreed with his score in this round, and I do have trouble seeing it, but that doesn't make this judge a bad judge by any stretch. And I hope people understand there is a difference between a good judge getting it quote unquote wrong and a bad judge just doing a bad job.
Okay, and you're talking about Brian Miner, the 50-45.
Brian Miner in this case, yes. So he had a 50-45. Again, it's harder for me to swallow, but there's a lot of track record that I'm familiar with there. So
One
I don't want
question that
to.
I'd like
I don't think land basting is the right call here.
one thing I'd like
What you
to
got, Eric?
ask. So Ariel Helwani scored at 48-47, Paul Hughes, which is an understandable card. He had said that 50-45 is the worst scorecard in that he has seen, I think, in history. And
Yeah.
he had also said that Paul Hughes was not fighting on a fair playing field based on those scorecards. I just wanted to, are you able to react to that? And what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm really sure I'm able to react to that. I'm human. But what I would say I have seen some pretty nasty scorecards out there. This is 50-45 for Hughes, or excuse me, for Usman Nurmagomedov here. It's not a good one. I don't love it. I've seen worse though. I definitely have. And I'm sure Ariel has too, but Ariel he has his opinions and he feels very strongly in this moment, and that is okay. We're gonna agree to disagree on that one, and that's fine. Um, it's not great. I don't love it. But also it's to the point about like a level playing field. I think everyone do that going in. I mean, if you're fighting Usman Nurmagomedov in Dubai, that's kind of part and parcel with it. It's unfortunate, but that's the fight they did. If he didn't want that fight in that venue and he was worried about a level playing field, then he wouldn't have taken the fight, but he did. And frankly, I think we saw afterward, Hughes, even said, like, look, I didn't do enough to convincingly win. And the word convincingly was, I think, a really clutch part of that because it's true. He didn't do enough to show that he convincingly won. I think he did enough to show that he could win that fight. I didn't score it that way, but you can, and that's totally viable. But you want to get these wins if you know you've got maybe a deck stacked against you a little bit, and he probably did. You do have to go out there and you got to push harder. If he did what he did in round 5, the other rounds, I don't think he would have been denied every round. I know it went the way it did, but even if every round still went the way of Usman or Magomedov on one judge's card, and he still gets the other two, guess what? He wins a split decision. It's all he needs to do, and I think I saw a lot of opportunities. I think the commentary team saw a lot of opportunities for him to do more, and he didn't.
Yeah.
Last question for me, and then we can move on. Sorry. Just to go back to the even playing field thing. If you are going into Dubai and you understand like the odds might be stacked against me, shouldn't that fall on the judges anyway, though? Like, how would that even happen if not for the judges?
Well, I don't think that the judges necessarily are sitting. None of these judges are like,
That's what I want to clarify.
trying to say, well, I'm going to give it for, I have to give it to Usman Magomedov because he's got a home field advantage. There's a UK judge, Daryl Ransom, was on this fight. I actually we had the same card as him, Eric. You and I had the exact same card as Daryl Ransom. Very experienced UFC judge. He's still on the younger side. UFC, I mean, works UFC events. I keep a database, right, of judging data going back 9 years. It's almost 99.9%, 99% complete. I've got more information on here than MMA Decisions does. Ransom has the highest percentage of being in the majority on an individual round for any official with at least 100 UFC rounds scored in that time. This is somebody who is very sharp and tends to be on the same page as his other judges. That doesn't make him always right, doesn't make him always wrong, but it tends to be someone at least sees it his way, right? So this is a solid judge, and honestly, we scored it the same way, right? There's also Hadi Muhammad Ali, who is now working in California. He's worked much more UFC and PFL events in recent years. This is a judge who is growing in experience. He had a 50-45, but he did actually go for Hughes in round 5. I think that's a pretty defensible scorecard still, too. Again, it really just comes down to that 5th round. I think people are a little mad about that one, and I get it because I have a hard time defending it. But realistically, at the end of the day, you and I both came away from that one thinking that Usman Nurmagomedov did enough to win 3 rounds and thus win the fight. So the fact that he did leave with that belt at the end of the day, it's really not that offensive. The way he got there, maybe we don't love that. But the result is not it's not like somebody got robbed, Nobody got robbed here. And as far as judging, I don't know that these judges are going in there and saying, well, I got to make these people happy. Maybe they do. I can't speak to their mindset, right? But I think a lot of them are very experienced enough in big fights to know that that's not something they need to do.
All right, I would love to keep talking about this one. Literally, we could do a whole podcast episode on this one, but we got to move on.
I used to do those.
Yes. Rest in peace, couchside judges. We're trying to make it live on.
Rest in power.
Yes, rest in power. There we go.
Couchside judges never die.
Alrighty, so that recaps the main event. But Scott, do you have anything you want to say about the co-main event about Corey Anderson and his title defense, or claiming of the title rather?
Yeah, he claimed a title that he basically kind of already had in so many words or whatever. However he got it, he still got gold around his waist. He looked really good, I mean, obviously he still has moments where he's not going to be the most dominant fighter in there. There's a lot of weaknesses that he kind of shows, and maybe there's some holes in the game, but he's good enough to put it on fighters, and he keeps it going. 25-8, Beast in 25-8. Shout out to the old nickname. I think that basically, if you can't keep up with his pace, he's going to crush you later on. And that's what he did against Dovlet Yakshimuradov here. He was basically at the point of borderline 10-8s in rounds 4 and 5. And if you can get there, it's hard to stop him. So he looked really good. I think he's still a top 10 level light heavyweight in the world.
All right. Well, guys, that is your recap for the past weekend. Let's move on to this weekend. We got UFC Rio, and Charles Oliveira is going to be taking on Mateus Gamrot. And, guys, Charles Oliveira is going to be headlining in Brazil sort of for the first time, at least in any meaningful way, right? Because the first time he kind of got screwed over by COVID. All the fans in the arena were not able to be there because this was right at the start of COVID. They had to shut it down for fans, so he wasn't competing in front of his Brazil home crowd. This time he's gonna probably have a packed arena out there in Rio. So what do you guys think about Charles finally being able to fight in front of his home crowd? I'll throw this one to Eric.
Yeah, Charles Oliveira in front of Brazil. I look at this and I'm like looking at the past fight night main events. I'm like, this is up there for the whole year of like better fight night main events. I mean, Charles Oliveira is not too far removed from fighting for the title. We saw him, near miss against Arman Tsarukyan. That was a super interesting fight. Obviously, Mateus Gamrot obviously defeated Arman Tsarukyan. So a super intriguing fight. I expect a very rambunctious crowd on Saturday when he makes that walk, as it should be. It brings back the old times when we were going to Brazil all the time. Anderson Silva and all those. We're going to Brazil pretty consistently, so it feels good to go back to Brazil. Obviously, it's top two sport in the country, and it's good to be going back to Brazil and really reclaim, kind of like bring back the heritage of Brazilian fighters in the UFC.
How about you, Scott? Does this warm your heart a little bit?
A little bit, we talked, Eric and I, when you were out that one week, we talked about like the UFC doing these events in particular locales and like featuring those fighters and that kind of thing. It's something they used to do a little bit more of, and we're starting to get a little bit more now that they're traveling and all that kind of thing. They've always done it in Brazil, but frankly, getting the chance for Charles Oliveira to have his flowers in front of fellow Brazilians after the fact that 5 years away, he now built his career into something that's Hall of Fame level, right? He became a champion in that time. I think there is going to be so much love and adulation for him there. It's not Sao Paulo, the area of Brazil he is from, but I think Brazilians are going to be treating him like royalty, and that's great to see. You love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's talk about Mateus Gamrot, the guy that will be standing on the other side of that octagon on Saturday night. And it's seems like it's been kind of a hard time for Mateus getting into a title picture, right? He hasn't really been done many favors by the UFC, but what do you think if he does come away with a win on Saturday night, a late notice fight being that, what do you think his title shot aspirations could look like after this one? I'll throw this one over to you, Scott.
Dude, it's a huge opportunity
Yeah.
for Gamrot. He might be top three by the end of the year if he wins this fight. I think things are clearing out for him that he'd actually be in that very, very short list to get up there. He does need to be more active, strengthen his case. I do think the late notice opportunity is going to help, because obviously, there's a difference between, okay, I'm not fighting very often. UFC doesn't like to see that, but also when you step up and help them, they remember that kind of thing. I think it's, again, you beat someone who just fought for the vacant title 4 months ago. Giant boost. Big opportunity.
Eric, how about you? What do you think?
Huge opportunity, Gamrot. If you look at his past opponents, it's like he beat Ludovic Klein last time. Now he's jumping up and fighting Charles Oliveira, who just fought for the title.
That was a late notice thing too. Yeah.
Another late notice fight, but like we just look at
Wasn't
all the opponents is like Dos Anjos, who's very old. Jalen Turner's no longer in the UFC. Like, there's a lot of opponents here where it's like I don't really know how much stock I can take into his wins, and his losses are to Dan Hooker and Beneil Dariush. His last really quality win was Arman Tsarukyan, which is an amazing fight that I wish he would have built on more, but unfortunately had a setback loss for him against Beneil Dariush. So huge opportunity, and I look forward to it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole other host of fights, of course, at UFC Rio. So let's get to your guys' fights to watch. Scott, what do you got?
I'm picking the co-main event here. We're not going to get a whole lot of shine on it, so I'll pick it here. Davison Figueiredo against Montel Jackson. Great opportunity for Montel Jackson. Figueiredo's got to hold his spot here a little bit. I think it's going to be a fun fight.
Eric, what do you got?
Vicente Luque versus Joel Alvarez. This one's going to be straight up violence. Joel Alvarez, at one point, I was expecting him to be a 155-pound, title contender. But he's going to come in here. He's got the elbow, he's got the knees, and I'm expecting violence, no doubt.
Very, very.
And this one's at
excited for
170
those.
too. He's up to
Yeah.
170
He
now.
moved up in weight. Important detail. Moved up in weight. I expect him to be a lightweight champion contender. He had to move up in weight because he was just too damn big for the division. So now he moves up to 170, and let's see what he's got. I'm excited.
I'm really pumped for that one, so that'll be good. And Scott, what do you got for our event rating for UFC Rio? How does this one stack up?
So we have a 31 here, which may not sound all that special, but I will say that the main event, the co-main event, they're both strong, particularly for a fight night. That Luque Alvarez fight is solid on the main card as well. There's good depth here. I think what happened is the event rating got dragged down kind of notably by a pair of featherweight fights on the main card. That's Ricardo Ramos, right? Ricardo, not Ricardo. Ricardo Ramos against Khan Ofli and Lucas Almeida against Michael Aswell. You take those four and you average their ranking together, and it's close to 200. So we're talking about a distinct drag down in the level of main card fighters. So otherwise, I would say that the fight card we have here, UFC Rio, is much better than its event rating.
Yeah, I would agree. Those top three
Yeah.
fights are fantastic.
Yep.
So very, very excited for that. And Eric, how about you wrap us up with UFC Rio with your 3 bets in 3 minutes?
Thank you very much, Jake. Yeah, 0-3 last week. Tough. We had Magomed Ankalaev 18-1 by submission. Expected, a little bit better out of him there, but not exactly something that you're expecting to hit. Khalil Roundtree, shout out to you for getting into a firefight in the 3rd round after winning the first 2. Killing our goes to decision bet. And then Jusang Young was minus 250 after round 1, and then got knocked out by Daniel Santos. We move on after some profitable weeks. After an 0-3 is not what you're looking for. We move on looking for better results here. 3 bets in 3 minutes. Put it on the clock, and we are going to start with a pure system play here for UFC Rio on the prelims. I might mess these names up. Bia Mesquita versus Irina Alekseeva. Alekseeva, well known in the Bellator world. She 5-3 in her MMA career. She's in the UFC now, and she's 1-2. She's facing off against a real grappler, and she's very well known on the grappling scene, done a lot of grappling competitions and stuff like that. This fight is projected to end inside the distance, which is very rare for a women's bantamweight fight. Just some numbers to throw at you. This is a pure system play. I'm going to have goes to decision at plus 200, mostly because women's bantamweight fights go to decision 65% of the time. So, yes, there is some value in her grappling and all that. Alekseeva has been to decision in 2 of her 3 UFC fights, so right on par with those numbers. I'm taking goes to decision here. It could end in submission, but plus 200 when you're looking at 66% of fights since 2023 going to decision at this weight class, I'll take it. We move to the main card. Joel Alvarez finally back, fighting at welterweight. Now instead of lightweight, fighting against Lucente Luque. Tough fight for Luque here. Alvarez is 6'3". He's now at 170 pounds. I expect him to come in here correct. I expect him to come in here beefy, and I expect him to come out of here with a finish win. That's not exactly saying much. He's minus 300 to win by finish. I think the extra weight will help him here. And those elbows are just nasty, man. Like, his elbows are some of the best in the UFC. Future title contender potentially at 170. Who knows? Give me Joel Alvarez by knockout, plus 175 over Run Fanatics. And then we go to the main event. Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot. Now, previously I had considered fading Oliveira in the spot. A couple reasons I didn't. Number 1, Mateusz Gamrot's coming over from Poland, and he's basically been flying all over the country. Oliveira was in Las Vegas and then flying to Brazil. Just the travel schedule and Gamrot taking this on short notice kind of like X itself out for me. And, for me, Gamrot's been knocked down in 4 of his 7 fights. Now, he's won 5 of those 7. But when he gets knocked down, he can rely on his grappling to save him. That's not an option here. If he gets knocked down, he's going to shoot for a takedown and get guillotine or darce choked pretty quickly. Give me Charles Oliveira inside the distance, get it plus 150. And it's a very tough spot for Gamrot. If he's going to get clipped, he cannot just jump in for a double leg and think that he's going to land on top and recover. That's not how that works against someone with Oliveira's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. So 3 bets in 3 minutes. Let's get back on the board here and enjoy.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. And Scott, it's your time to take it away for quick hits.
Guys, we have quite a few quick hits to get to today. Some very wildly different things. So we'll start at the top with the biggest one, I think, from most people's perspective here. Conor McGregor has been suspended 18 months for violating the UFC's anti-doping policy, failing to submit multiple tests with the Combat Sports Anti-Doping (CSAT). It is retroactive. So it will expire on March 20th next year. It's not going to put any sort of functional plans out of place because realistically, Conor was only going to fight at this White House card in the second quarter of the year, long after the suspension would be up. But, one would think he's probably got to get some tests in, right? Speaking of the White House card, actually, though, President Donald Trump he said recently that the UFC White House card will be on his birthday, which is June 14th. It is also Flag Day. That's a Sunday. I'll wait for the UFC to announce, their official plans before I put that date on my calendar. But that's what we're targeting here, apparently, says POTUS. More immediate fight news. UFC 322 is going to feature Malcolm Wellmaker against Siri Sidi. That as reported by Marcel Dorf. Intriguing prospect to fight added to the Garden card, presumably on the prelims. So there's another one for New York City coming our way. Update on the UFC antitrust case here, and this is good news for the fighters. The judge presiding over it has approved payments from that $375 million settlement, so that money can finally start funneling its way to the participating fighters that are anticipating that money. Unfortunate news for a member of the UFC roster. Heavyweight Justin Tafa, who was, scratched from his UFC Perth fight last month, did not make the walk, did not get to weigh-in day or anything like that. He is putting his fighting career on hiatus. Sounded like almost like a semi-retirement kind of deal, leaving the door open to eventually return. Though pretty wide open. We'll see. He's had 4 fights scrapped in the last since the start of 2024. According to Tapology, so there just seem to be issues with him getting to the scales and thus to the cage. Over on the PFL side, and back to the anti-doping setup here, PFL and the U.S. anti-doping agency, USADA, they have split up. According to MMA Junkie, the organization is now going to partner with that Mohegan tribe that we mentioned before, run by, of course, Mike Mazzulli, and they will be the anti-doping regulators now for the PFL. Closing on some very grisly news, unfortunately, here, and that is former UFC fighter Suman Mokhtarian. He was shot and killed in his native Australia on Wednesday. He was 33. The attack is believed to be targeted, police said. So, I mean, unfortunately, that does add up. There have been some past attempts on his life before. We've even talked about it on the show. So that's it for this week.
Thank you so much for that, Scott, and really, truly terrible. But let's lighten it up a little bit by going into the final round, talk about some of our homework assignments. And this one, Scott, I'm not going to lie, watching through the first round, I was a little bit puzzled. I was like,
What fight are we talking about here, guys?
Sorry, I do that too much. Sorry. Randy Couture versus Lyoto Machida. And yeah, as I was saying, going through that first round, I was a little bit confused about this fight assignment. And then I realized why you picked it in that second round. That was I wish that there was like my face being recorded on like my little Mac camera, because I literally went. It was great. I wish you could have seen it, Scott.
It went Karate Kid. I mean, and it was great watching as Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan are realizing in real time that they saw the crane kick from Karate Kid in an actual functional fight to knock out a UFC Hall of Famer and end his career. It was just remarkable. Lyoto Machida is my favorite fighter of all time.
Really?
I did not know that.
Yes, that is true. He is my favorite fighter of all time. I love the style. A lot of people didn't love that style, but I thought it was fascinating because it was just he could do anything at any one time with one strike, and you just never knew what he was going to pull out of his bag to do that one thing. And he pulled this out, and I never forget it. It was just remarkable. I wasn't like going through the roof crazy or anything like that. I've never really been that type usually, but it was remarkable to see it. I mean, Eric, had you ever seen that before?
I had not, and I was like, and the whole time I was thinking, I was like, okay, Couture is old, man. I was like, what are the betting odds for this fight? Like, I couldn't find any, but I was like, I would love to have known. I was like, I would have laid the hammer on Lyoto Machida just based on the age.
Alrighty. Well, I mean, There's not too much else to say about that than just an absolutely insane knockout.
Unbelievable
If you didn't do your
knockout. One of
homework
the craziest
assignment,
ones
it's not a difficult one to get out of the way. So add it to your list of homework, I would say. But Scott, what is
If you're
our
impatient, skip to the second round.
just
You
watch
know,
it?
if you,
First round, I
just
was like,
watch
what
it.
is happening in
Yeah,
this?
you didn't miss a whole lot in the
Oh, yeah.
first round, I would say. So just the
Nah, it wasn't the most. I mean, it's fun to watch these fighters and their styles and stuff because Machida was building up to something. Like
Yeah.
it's not that he knew that he was going to throw that one, but he does a lot to set up other things later on. He's thinking like that.
Well, what do we have for our next homework assignment, Scott?
I'm giving you Michael Chandler against Eddie Alvarez, #1 back in 2011.
Bellator?
Yes, Bellator.
There we
Bellator
go.
58. A couple of future UFC elites fighting for Alvarez's lightweight title. Chandler was still a prospect at this point. 8-0, coming off of his winning the season 4 lightweight tournament back when Bellator was all about these seasons and that kind of thing. They went tournaments and then they didn't, and then they went Grand Prix, which are tournaments. It was a weird evolution, but this set up the opportunity, of course, the title fight. Alvarez had been well established at this point as one of the best, or potentially the best, 155-pounder outside the UFC. So this was a very interesting fight, and go have a good time.
I
believe
imagine they
Michael
come
Chandler
out,
has
huh?
I believe Michael Chandler has hair in this one.
Oh, there we go. Mythical
think so.
fighter.
Could be wrong. Yeah,
I imagine they come out relatively unscathed, right? Like
Ugh,
picture perfect
Snorefest.
faces.
It's a very tame fight.
I'm sure. Alrighty, now to recap our history MMA. Scott, what happened this week in MMA?
Dude, we had a big anniversary. October 6, 2018. 7 years since Khabib Nurmagomedov tapped out Conor McGregor with a neck crank before setting off that post-fight brawl that we all know about. Dylan Dennis is involved. Both teams, fighters are involved. And this was at UFC 229, by the way, which is, if you don't know, it's the highest buy rate event in UFC history. 2.4 million announced buys. Giant moment for the sport, also an infamous one.
Yes, it is. Eric, I'm sure you have.
I love whenever Joe Rogan's like, no, 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 no. It's the funniest
It's not
thing.
supposed to happen. All right. Well, before we wrap up, because I feel like this has been a big thing going on for the past few weeks, the Smashing Machine came out. Scott, I understand you saw it. Real quick before we wrap up, what did you think?
I liked it. There's some elements that I wish they'd kind of developed a little bit more. I think it couldn't choose which storylines it wanted to really focus on, so it did a little bit of everything, but not enough of anything. But on the whole, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a neat window into, MMA 25 years ago when some of the biggest stuff was happening overseas and it was just big over there, and over here, the fighters are just normal. The Rock, of course, Dwayne Johnson. I thought it was just a little hard for me to get past him being The Rock in the very beginning, but very quickly he was Mark Kerr for me. And I thought he did a very fantastic job. Definitely a much more nuanced performance than we ever see from The Rock as well. So, I liked Emily Blunt's terrific. I would go see it. It didn't make a lot of money at the box office. I don't think they should have put it the same weekend as UFC pay-per-view. Who's going to budget $110 to go watch a movie and go watch fights? I mean, they should have waited a week, I think.
Yeah,
but
come
I
on.
liked the movie, and I would recommend it.
Alrighty, there we go, guys. Well, it's a pleasure as always. I appreciate you to sit and talk in MMA with me. And we will do it again next week, so we'll see you then.